All have been diagnosed with multiple personality disorder, or MPD. Joy becomes Bobby.
Bobby, you're out today.
I am now.
Bobby, ready for the story time.
Some therapists believe MPD is caused by severe child abuse. Abuse so severe that as children, these patients invented a whole host of characters to help them survive it. This is how it works.
What multiple personality disorder is, basically, is it's a little child imagining that the abuse is happening to somebody else.
And this helps her because she in some way then is no longer present for the abuse.
Right, it puts some distance between her and the abuse, it softens the emotional impact, and then the next step is to put a memory barrier between yourself and this new identity. And now not only did it not happen to you, you don't even remember it.
I can't.
Dr. Colin Ross, a Canadian from Winnipeg, is a leader in the field of MPD. 2 years ago, he moved to Dallas to set up this MPD inpatient unit. Dr. Ross believes that each separate personality or alter holds a memory of abuse.
Would she be willing to come and talk about that?
Brenda?
She might hurt her if she comes out.
Would she be able to just come out and just have the body sit there and just talk?
Learning just what happened to each of them is part of the therapy, so he encourages them to come out to talk about it one by one.
Brenda, it's Dr. Ross calling. I'm just asking if you would be able to come out and talk and just kind of stay calm there, if possible? Would that be possible?
It'd be possible.
Okay, great. Because Joy...
I did this.
Did you?
Yeah, and I cut up my feet too.
And we switch, just people stay out maybe 5-10 minutes and then somebody else comes out.
A single patient can have hundreds of different alters. Sometimes Dr. Ross must coax them out. Sometimes they just take over. It's called switching.
We've had...
This patient just switched.
We've had a great deal of alters within the past week come out all at once.
Wendy?
Derek.
The cast of characters within these patients is said to range from children and adults of both sexes to animals and toys.
Derek, yeah, be good. Hi, Derek.
In the heart of Ontario's cottage country, north of Toronto, is Parry Sound, population 6,000. It's the birthplace of hockey great Bobby Orr. Every summer, it booms with tourists. People here were comfortable with the gentle rhythms of small-town life. But a couple of years ago, things began to get strange. There were rumors of a bizarre illness. It seemed at least 15 citizens had come down with something so rare, most had never even heard of it. Multiple personality disorder. Parry Sound was in the grip of an epidemic. One of the afflicted was Sharon Jacqueline. Inside her are not 2 or 3, but 30 different personalities.
Crystal, 6, female. Patty, 4, female. George, 45. I have a baby. Daphne.
Sharon knew
Kathy,
she had been molested as a child and felt depressed. She sought help from a number of therapists.
Vicky, Rebecca. Well, I had one who first started as a whirlwind. He turned out to be human, but then there was another one who is like stuffed animal that blocks things in a room so that they can't move.
A stuffed animal.
Like a stuffed animal.
Is it getting better to go from depression to having 30 personalities?
Well, it's the old saying that if you want to make an omelet, you have to break eggs. And in order for me to become whole, I have to take out the parts that are not whole and have them have their own therapy and then put us together.
Sharon's MPD diagnosis came as a relief. It was made here at the Parry Sound Community Mental Health Clinic by a marriage and family counselor named Dale Alt, a Californian who moved to town 4 years ago. These 3 women also sought help. All had different problems. They all saw the same therapist, Dale Alt, and all came out with the same diagnosis, MPD.
I thought I was a normal person up until the day that I walked into his office. The reasons I went into therapy now are minuscule compared to the amount of shit I went through with him.
In your life prior to this diagnosis, had you manifested any other personalities?
Never.
Did anybody in your family ever say, one day you act this way, the next way you act this is crazy?
Never.
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 Bonnie Mowry hadn't been acting strangely either. She was just depressed. Her teenage daughter and Bonnie's new boyfriend weren't getting along. Family counseling is what she sought. Treatment for MPD is what she got.
How did he diagnose this in you?
He hypnotized me, and it was quite some time after that I came to, and he told me that he spoke to the first personality and that her name was Judy. Wild dreams I have in this hell of a hole. You didn't read my pain. Don't you have a soul? Where is your heart? You're just like all the others. Jordan, he wrote that to Dale.
Jordan was but one of many. There were Bud, Chrissy, Pat, Rudy, even a cloud called Lady in the Mist. 58 personalities in all.
She was 5 years old, but Dale would always say, you got to do this work in order to get better. This is the kind of artwork that came out of me.
As if driven by forces unknown, all three women became wildly creative, filling page after page with artwork and jottings. Alt told them this revealed a history of sex abuse. They were shocked. None of them had any memories of abuse. Gail LeBreton went to Alt for marital counseling. She came out an incest survivor with 8 personalities and a ruined marriage.
I started hallucinating. I started mutilating myself. I did things that I have never, ever done in my life.
And you think now what? That these ideas were implanted somehow?
I truly believe that.
In your mind?
Yes, I do.
By
Mr. Alt.
This is just how they think it was done, through hypnosis. In this video of her therapy, obtained by the Fifth Estate, Connie Nickerson has been hypnotized. Therapist Alt is trying to coax out a personality he's calling the Earth Woman.
I need to speak to the Earth Woman. If she would please speak to me.
I don't know where she is.
Connie sought help for an eating disorder, but she too was told she'd been abused and as a result had developed 15 personalities.
He seemed to really be interested in the, I call it, like the tart personalities, the trollops. That's the ones he seemed to be specifically wanting to know about their sexual escapades. In fact, he wanted me in one of the sessions to actually start sounding out the sexual abuse, what it sounded like.
Connie had been seeing Alt at the clinic for about 9 months without a single mention of MPD. He didn't make the discovery until he'd taken 2 courses on the disorder, one from Ontario psychologist Dr. Margot Rivera.
It's certainly not difficult to pick up the signs that are suggestive of multiple personality. One of the sort of disquieting parts of doing widespread education in this area is how many people start picking up, people in their agency, either on their caseloads who have multiple personality.
What you want to do an assessment.
Dr. Rivera believes therapists are missing MPD, misdiagnosing it as schizophrenia or depression.
Their lives have been depressing.
Her mission? Leading seminars like the one Alt took. She's taught 8,000 people across the country what to look for.
Ask them about nightmares.
Here, Dr. Rivera gives graduate students in Toronto a list of symptoms. Blank spells, missing time, voices in the head, and the best clue of all, actually contacting a personality.
And one child suffering from multiple personality.
She believes the disorder isn't rare at all. It's just been hidden, like the crime she believes is the cause.
Of trauma, and especially childhood trauma.
The issue of multiple personality and how it's recognized, not recognized, the issue of skepticism around the whole area can't really be disentangled from the issue of our social responses to widespread child abuse, and particularly the issue of child sexual abuse.
Alt believed that too. His patients say he was relentless in his search for memories of sexual abuse. The women began by insisting they weren't abused, but eventually they would all accuse someone.
What did you tell Dale Alt that your father had done to you?
Oh, outrageous things. I don't know if I can say, because I've never spoke to my father about any of this. And I don't want to hurt him any more than I already have. It was just awful things that there's no way I could have ever lived through if my dad had done these things. And I couldn't understand why I kept saying these things. It was just awful. And I blame myself so much for what has happened. But my father never sexually abused me. Never. And I would swear, and I would take it to my grave, that he never laid a hand on me sexually.
Bonnie's boyfriend, John, has stood by her. He watched as the longer she stayed in therapy, the longer her list of abusers grew. It included not only her father, but two of her father's friends, an aunt, and her minister.
How close were the pair of you to laying charges against your fathers in
Very
this?
close.
Real close.
He had, on numerous occasions, would say, you know, that you can do something about this. You don't have to let him walk the streets. You can take him to court and you can charge him.
Your father?
Yes. You just let me know when you're ready to take that walk and I'll be right there beside you.
What stopped you?
We got out of therapy.
Across North America, families are being devastated by their children's memories of sexual abuse recovered in therapy for MPD. In Kamloops, BC, Eileen and Ivan Ehler are reeling from accusations made 8 years ago. Their daughter accused them first, then their sons went to the same therapist and also recovered memories of abuse.
We were having orgies with them.
So the suggestion was that you were having sex parties with your children?
That's right. And you know, the nephews and niece and our own kids. Oh, we had a great time.
But none of our nephews and nieces remember that.
No, nobody remembers except Sheila.
Their daughter Sheila refused to be interviewed. 8 years ago, she sought family counseling. Instead, she was diagnosed with MPD caused by sexual abuse. She hasn't spoken to her parents since.
It's pitiful. And it's so ridiculous. And it never happened.
Son Walter's MPD and recovered memories of sexual abuse vanished when he stopped therapy. Today, he's just embarrassed.
You look back on it now and you think, I mean, this is ridiculous. You know, the type of thing, if you figure somebody could talk you into doing this, you'd think they're nuts.
Son David was told he was molested and had MPD in his very first session. He wasn't convinced and soon quit. The therapist then turned on him.
It was just about instantaneous. She started to jump on me and accuse me of being a molester.
It's an abusive, dysfunctional home. And mother thinks she can diddle the kids, dad thinks he can diddle the kids, and that's how life is, period. That is normal. That, to them, that is not unusual.
The therapist was Louise Edwards. In an interview with the Fifth Estate last year, she was steadfast in her assessment of David.
He said that you put him in a trance-like state during his first appointment, and by the end of it, you'd convinced him that he'd been sexually abused by his family and was a case of multiple personality disorder.
In the first session.
Mm-hmm. Remember David Ehler? Says that's what happened to him.
But he was switching all over the place.
He was switching? In what way?
And changing personalities.
How was he doing that?
Well, literally switching from one to the next, and changing of eyes, changing positions and everything. It wasn't very, what can you say?
The Ehlers have their sons back, but they're still waiting for their daughter.
The only thing I hope she comes to her senses before we die. Because if she comes back to her senses after we're dead, what is it going to do to her, eh? You know, then it'll be awful for her to know what she did to us and that we died before she came back to us.
You're more worried about her, aren't you?
Well, of course I am. She's my kid.
When we return, growing fears MPD therapy is creating illness and causing serious harm.
I said to Dale, like, don't you think that's odd? Like, no one's getting better, and everyone wants to kill themselves after they meet you and are in therapy.
Up here, there are two things that can take your breath away. The scenery and a cold, like the one I've got right now. That's why I depend on something my doctor recommended. Dimetap Extentabs. For my nasal congestion and runny nose, I take one in the morning, then I breathe easier all day. So when you can't be bothered by a cold, remember to take Dimetap Extentabs and give yourself some breathing space.
I'll be home for Christmas.
When we think of a jolly old guy in a red coat, we think of Henry.
Merry Christmas. Got all kinds of terrific gifts.
He's got all kinds of friendly advice.
Don't forget our great prices.
Clean up with the Iona Speed Vac Power Brush with a 2-motor system, now only $84.97.
Looking good, Santa. So where are all your gifts?
I've got some friends in the biz.
I'll be home for Christmas. Home of the handyman.
Imagine if a styling line was good for your hair. Only Alberto European Styling has Hydrotin B5, and Alberto conditions your hair for a natural, healthy-looking shine. Alberto European, it's good for your hair.
To many Canadians, the taste of coffee can be bitter. But add the terrific taste of Sugar Twin and things sweeten up nicely. Sugar Twin with NutraSweet. The terrific taste at the sweetest price.
Hello, I'm Flora MacDonald. The drought in southern Africa is the worst natural disaster in living memory. Here in Zimbabwe, 500,000 people are running out of food and water. Oxfam Canada's drought relief program is helping its partners here in Zimbabwe with the distribution of maize, and that will allow people to remain on their farmlands and be able to plant next year's crop.
To a multiple. Which is my real wife? Who's my real mommy?
How many personalities do you have?
About 900. Singular personality.
MPD is breaking out everywhere.
With before birth, you can split, before you're even born.
As the world turns.
A character on this soap has it.
What causes someone to have multiple personalities?
Gloria Steinem has embraced those afflicted.
All of these people are, in a sense, prophets of human possibilities.
The year is 1923, and the baby is one of the early sufferers of multiple personality disorder. She was one of a rash of cases at the turn of the century. Back then, patients had only 2 or 3 personalities, and there was no talk of sexual abuse. It was the true story of Sybil, told first in a book and later in a film, that identified severe child abuse as the cause of MPD.
And the people vaccinate.
Sybil suffered unspeakable tortures, including ice water enemas at the hands of her mother. Her tragedy struck a chord in a society struggling to come to terms with child abuse.
To the light, to the light, to the light. She's going to bring it. Oh no. No, please, please, it'll tear me, it'll tear me.
Sybil's story was published in 1973, and it launched a movement. The International MPD Society now boasts a membership of 3,000 mental health professionals. When it was founded in 1984, Sybil's life story was one of the only case histories the Society's members had to go on. Its incoming president is Canada's Colin Ross. He's published over 100 papers and a textbook. In it, he laments that traditional medicine doesn't take the disorder seriously enough.
There's a failure on the part of organized medicine, especially academic psychiatry, to understand, appreciate, and really take seriously and study and treat childhood abuse and its long-term consequences.
Yeah. I want to know how you
Today, Dr. Ross's group is learning more about how to contact alter personalities.
I was created to be the presenting alter.
But when it comes time for someone actually coming out, I'm in control of that.
With his help, Liz switches to 6-year-old Amanda.
And so there are no glow-in-the-dark stars at the store.
Her glow-in-the-dark star story brings out everyone's child alters.
Maybe we can buy some more paint.
I would like 1 star. Okay.
Be nice to the Boo-Boo Bear.
Connie, are you doing okay?
She's really sad.
Connie can't seem to contact any alters.
We have too many things to take care of on the outside. We can't come out.
Patients switch moods in seconds. And by the end of the session, it seems everyone is in chaos.
Can we get Cheryl back?
Before these patients can be made whole, Dr. Ross says he must follow each clue, uncover each memory. The detective work can go on for years.
If we can have you be grounded in 1993 too. These personality states can get formed to create, to deal with the abuse, and one might be formed to deal with abuse by dad, say, and then another one will remember abuse by uncle, to kind of divide it up into smaller parcels. But then they also create personalities to deal with all kinds of things in life in general.
How do those work, those ones?
Well, the mind just gets in the habit of doing that, it seems.
But does the mind work that way? That's the central issue in an emotional debate sweeping across North America and parts of Europe. It's emotional because child sexual abuse is a problem society has only recently begun to deal with. But this is not a debate about sexual abuse. It's a debate about memory. On one hand are those who say we can completely block out traumatic events and remember them only later in therapy. On the other hand are the memory experts who say the mind just doesn't work that way. Dr. Elizabeth Loftus has been researching memory for 20 years. A professor of psychology at the University of Washington, she says the theory of repressed memories raises a lot of questions.
Well, then you have to ask, why is it that studies of children who've witnessed their parents be murdered in front of them, studies of children who've witnessed their mothers be raped in front of them, studies of children who found their parents' body in a suicide, children of the Holocaust, they're flooded with intrusive thoughts about these horrible events. So why don't you see evidence of this kind of, massive repression in large numbers in those samples? Those studies don't show that.
But can you compare sex abuse to those other traumatic events in the sense that sex abuse is a crime that the victim often has to keep secret?
Some of my investigation of Holocaust memories, of course, do involve guilt and shame, the kind of guilt and shame that would be associated with genuine sexual abuse. There were still people who stole the bread of their sister or stole the shoes of their cousin in order to survive, and they felt terribly guilty and shameful about it.
But Dr. Ross remains firm in his belief severe trauma causes MPD, and MPD explains repressed memory. In a recent study, he suggested, over 100 million worldwide are at risk. You even hypothesized that we should be looking at a lot of other groups for MPD.
Anybody who's been severely traumatized.
I just want to go through the list here and just get you to say yes or no. Prostitutes, teenage runaways,
correct,
imprisoned male sex offenders,
right,
contemporary Ethiopian children.
Same would be true of children in Bosnia-Herzegovina today.
You think they might be going MPD?
Because of the tremendous trauma that they're experiencing.
So it doesn't have to be sex abuse?
No, it's trauma that's the theme,
It
psychological trauma.
And we talked about the contemporary street children in Rio de Janeiro. That is quite a list, isn't it?
That's only a drop in the bucket.
The debate over trauma and memory has yet to be resolved, so the question remains, how can people who weren't sexually abused come to believe they were? Critics say the answer lies in the way these so-called memories are being uncovered, usually through hypnosis. New York City is home to Columbia University professor and psychiatrist Dr. Herbert Spiegel. He's considered a leader in the field of hypnosis. A well-known experiment he conducted in the 1960s shows just how suggestible someone under hypnosis can be.
There is a communist plot developing that is aimed to control all the major...
Spiegel hypnotized his subject and gave him one simple suggestion, that the broadcast media had been taken over by the communists. Now watch what happens when he comes out of the trance.
I wonder if NBC knows what's going on.
What do you mean by that?
The people in charge of the programming could be the dupes of the Communist Party. My God, we could brainwash the whole population.
Oh, could, maybe.
The subject was so convinced the suggestion was true, he spent the next 15 minutes embroidering the conspiracy, inventing details, and even naming fictitious communist agents. If the suggestion to this man had been that he'd been sexually abused, would the idea have been so entrenched, and would he have embroidered it the way he did?
Absolutely. But it shows how readily a hypnotizable person can accept this kind of an implant, incorporate it, and use it, because they honestly believe that this is part of their own new knowledge.
Sybil's case convinced Dr. Spiegel that the use of hypnosis might be creating MPD and false memories. He was one of Sybil's doctors. Spiegel was asked to do an assessment of the young woman by her primary psychiatrist, Dr. Cornelia Wilbur. For the first time, Dr. Spiegel states publicly his opinion of the case.
When she worked with me, she would ask me now, when we want to go to a certain period of life, well, shall I become Flora, or can I just say it? I didn't know what she meant at first. Well, she said, well, when I'm with Dr. Wilbur, she wants me to be that person. And I said, well, if you want to, you can, but you don't have to if you don't want to. So with me, she didn't have to be these personalities.
But you're suggesting, in fact, that this so-called MPD that Sybil is said to have had was, in fact, created in therapy.
That's just what I'm suggesting, that it was created by the therapist.
Today's MPD outbreak compelled him to speak now.
Because I'm getting embarrassed by what I am seeing, where so many patients are being victimized by the therapist by a misdiagnosis.
If Sybil didn't have MPD, then what was wrong with her? Spiegel diagnosed her as dissociative. People with dissociative disorders are extremely vulnerable to the power of suggestion. They retreat from reality by lapsing into a kind of self-hypnosis, and their sense of identity is extremely fragile. Ridgeview Institute near Atlanta, Georgia, has a clinic for dissociative patients. Psychiatrist Dr. George Ganaway is its director. He says his dissociative patients don't have MPD, but a therapist looking for it might think they found it.
We have very little evidence that personalities exist in adult patients before the therapist and the patient both uncover them, usually under hypnosis.
Dr. Ganaway won't let his patients be filmed. He thinks standard MPD treatment reinforces the idea of a fragmented self. Early on, he tried speaking to personalities, but it made his patients worse.
I found that all that tended to do was to what we call reify the personalities. It made them more real, because as each personality began to talk to me directly, it helped the patient believe even more that these were different people inside, different personalities rather than just other aspects of their own mind.
Want to talk to the devil?
Sure, why not?
Nobody talks to the devil.
Well, maybe that's why he's been feeling kind of lonely inside.
But what Dr. Ross seeks, he finds. What he finds today are satanic personalities.
Hey,
don't talk to the devil.
These women believe they were abused by a satanic cult.
I'm asking, this is Dr. Ross, and I'm asking if that part that Brenda says is the devil inside that tells her to cut would like to come and talk for a minute about what's going on. Hi. Thanks for coming.
What gives you the authority to talk to me?
Actually, you're the one who has the authority, because if you didn't want to come and talk, you wouldn't be here.
Don't do that.
A squeaky stuffed toy sets off the devil personality.
I hate that. I hate that. It's gonna be dead.
Are you male or female? Wow.
Their devil is called Belial.
You have no right to say that name.
G-O-D.
Sorry. Belial.
That name is for the inner sanctum.
Hey, easy over there.
Sandy, it's Joy.
Sandy?
Squeeze my hand.
Sandy, is Dr. Ross calling here?
There's an expectation on the part of the therapist and the patient that there must be perhaps another personality with an even worse trauma memory in there somewhere, and that has to be ferreted out. And so there's this search and seizure process that goes on, one after another, and you can get into the hundreds, into the thousands if you need to. And until the underlying character pathology is dealt with, they may find themselves becoming increasingly dysfunctional and remain in treatment for years, chasing an endless horizon of trauma memories.
Every time you cut, you're working on trying to keep the body safe.
These patients can deteriorate to the point of self-mutilation. Some of them look like war veterans, and in a way they are, waging war on themselves. Since she began therapy, CB has discovered 300 alters, and some of them don't seem to like her very much. She was burning herself before she came, now it's worse.
So how did this happen to you? What is this on your arms?
Well, some of these are third-degree burns that were done on an electric stove.
And you did that to yourself?
One of my authors did it, yeah.
Do you have to get worse before you get better?
There's a lot of techs here who will tell you that you know you're getting better when you feel like shit. And I must be getting a lot better.
Because?
I feel like shit.
It looks like, I mean, if this is therapy, yikes, because everybody in there seemed to be in some kind of chaos. There was a lot of pain, and women were still cutting themselves and burning themselves. I mean, is this what it's like to get better from this?
No, these people are not better. That's why they're in hospital. And this is a balancing act that we try and do all the time. We try and get the person to go slowly enough through therapy to keep them as functional as possible. And sometimes we don't get the balance right, or the person doesn't get the balance right.
90 kilometers from Parry Sound is Margot Rivera's training headquarters.
People to pick up the signs suggestive of multiple personality.
Like Colin Ross, Dr. Rivera strives to get the balance right. Doctors Rivera and Ross admire each other's work and share a similar approach, like talking to the alter personalities. In a training video she produced, Dr. Rivera even suggests signing contracts with them.
Often contracts are used at this stage of therapy.
A contract can be made about any area of the individual's life that may be problematic. And fulfilling a contract becomes the responsibility of all the personalities.
I certainly never name personality states. It would never occur to me to baptize a personality state.
So do you treat the alters as separate entities, though, is what I'm asking you?
No, I treat a person as a person.
You sign contracts with them, don't you?
Well, actually, in fact, I don't even do that at all now. I think maybe in the very early stages, different parts of the person would occasionally agree to certain things by signing contracts. But no, I don't even use written contracts with any of my clients at this point.
But you suggested that in your training video. Doesn't that imply a relationship with the alters if you're asking them to sign contracts?
It implies that I'm listening to this person and listening to the way that they need to express themselves.
In Parry Sound, Bonnie, Connie, and Gail were expressing themselves through self-mutilation, something they'd never done before. Gail LeBreton.
I was removing the whole toenail off of my foot.
And why were you doing that?
I have no idea.
Bonnie was coming home from the clinic bloodied and bruised. Connie had to get drunk to face therapy sessions at 2 a.m. All three women attempted suicide.
I said to Dale, like, don't you think that's odd? Like, no one's getting better, and everyone wants to kill themselves after they meet you and are in therapy. I said, well, they're in denial, and they have abusive relationships, and they're not well. And, you know, the personalities don't want them to do this work, and so they'd rather die. They want to, you know, kill them off. And he would always explain it. And I would think, oh, okay, you know, he'd always have an answer.
By last spring, all three decided they'd had enough and ended therapy with Alt. The women are suing him, the government-funded clinic, and its directors. Connie feels she got out in the nick of time.
Dale, what if all this has been a lie? And he said, well, I'd certainly have egg on my face. Egg on your face? I almost lost my children. My family's destroyed. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict now. And you can have egg on your face? Oh, well, you know, I said, it's a lie. It's all a lie. I've never been abused. This is all crap. And he'd say, oh, well, which personality is talking now? Well, obviously the ones with some brains, okay? So let's pick this one and we'll just walk out, okay? This is it.
And you did.
And I did.
Alt's patients needed treatment more than ever and got it from psychiatrist Dr. Alan Seltzer. He was disturbed by the shape they were in.
I can't treat these people for their presenting problems now. I'm in the process of treating them for the result of the therapy. It's a whole new disorder in a sense. Not a new disorder, but a new set of problems that weren't there before. I can't treat. Bonnie's still having problems with her daughter and John not getting along, but that's not her presenting complaint to me now. I'm trying to essentially detoxify her, if you will, or deprogram her from the effects of her therapy.
Following an internal investigation by the clinic's directors, Dale Alt resigned. The directors declined to be interviewed for this story, and so did Alt. He was living on his boat in Georgian Bay, where we approached him.
How do you explain all of the cases of MPD in a small town like Perry Sound, Mr. Alt?
Look at the statistics for child abuse. Look at the statistics for MPD resulting from it.
Because we've spoken to some of the women, three of the women, one of the men, and they suggest that in fact that they weren't MPD and that they hadn't been abused. So why this discrepancy in diagnosis and what they feel happened to them? How do you explain that to people?
It's terribly traumatic to identify oneself as an abuse victim and to confront and accuse the perpetrator, especially if it's a family member. And under family pressures, they cave in. And who am I? I'm no one. You know, I'm no one they have to live with or, you know, live in the same community with. I don't have any power over them. The family does.
But they suggested that they had no symptoms of MPD and no memory of sexual abuse before they went to see you.
That's absolutely false.
That's false.
That's false.
Situation where I suspect that someone has full-blown multiple personality.
Margot Rivera refused to comment on Dale Alt, their professional relationship, or what happened in Perry Sound. Since 1988, she's received over $400,000 in government grants to conduct seminars like this one. Now she and a colleague are asking for another $1.4 million to set up a province-wide diagnosis and treatment network.
We really do have to bend over backwards to be credible and not to be flaky. We're going to be seen to be flaky by a whole lot of people anyway, and being flaky along with being seen to be being flaky really doesn't help anybody.
The Ontario government is still reviewing Dr. Rivera's proposal, and Ontario Health Minister Ruth Greer declined our request for an interview. When we return, Dr. Ross explains his theory of how the CIA implanted MPD in children.
Now there's a new degree of odor protection. Introducing Degree Deodorant Active Stick, the body heat activated deodorant that releases extra odor protection every time your body heat rises. For a new degree of odor protection.
Cheese, please.
To have a taste for life.
Canadian cheese, please.
Sure, we'd like to invest. But with what?
I mean, we don't have $10,000 to put into something. Besides, we don't even know the first thing about investing. Well, what's an investment company going to do for us? We know we need to invest. Question is where?
Call investors today. When we at Nissan saw Lexus do a test like this to show how well their car is put together, we were very impressed. So we decided to try it on the Nissan Altima. You can imagine how pleased we were when our car's tolerances tested as accurately as theirs. Because ours is an entirely different kind of luxury sedan. It's an affordable one, the Nissan Altima.
Now there's a new degree of odor protection. Introducing Degree Deodorant Active Stick, the body heat activated deodorant that releases extra odor protection every time your body heat rises. For a new degree of odor protection.
2 cops? It's unnatural.
Local gossip wreaks havoc.
We work together.
Fingers are pointing as rumors run wild.
What's he doing showering at your place?
Under Scrutiny on North of 60, Thursday at 8 on CBC.
At Charter Hospital, patients are still following doctor's orders. Today, it's clay therapy. Step 1, wet the clay. Step 2, wet the board.
Who thinks they need it the most, raise their hand.
And who's up first? Cheryl Peterson is from Kingston, Ontario, and her treatment here has cost the province over $40,000. She's just the type of patient Margot Rivera is trying to reach. One of her alters, Mike, throws the clay.
Is this Michael? Hi, Michael. Mike. Nice to meet you. I'm Debbie. Want to throw mud at their faces?
Throw mud at their faces.
You can throw mud and say anything you want to say. There's no rules, and nobody's going to punish you. It's real important for you to hear that from me.
She's encouraged to feel anger over abuse she didn't remember until therapy.
What do you want to say? What do you want to say?
You're bad people. You're bad.
No, you're not bad. They're bad.
Don't hurt.
What would they do,
The
Mike?
bugs.
What would they do, Mike?
They hurt.
Yeah.
No. No.
Doing excellent, Mike. Doing excellent. Mike? Yeah. Feel my hands. Feel my hands on your hands. Feel the clay in your hands. Open your eyes. Open your eyes. There you go. Look around. Look around.
Cheryl had 70 personalities when she arrived here 4.5 weeks ago. Now she has 100, and she's too fragile to go home.
Are you getting better?
I am getting better. 2 years ago, I couldn't work. Now I can hold down a part-time job and do very well at it.
And yet the rumor on the floor this afternoon is that they found a rope in your room, so you're not...
Yeah, it's not a rumor. It was true. I still have parts that want to hurt me.
Cheryl's one of dozens of Canadians who've been treated this past year at one of the many American clinics like this one. MPD cases are sought after. Charter's unit can generate more than $1 million a month.
Multiple personality disorder is a growth industry. Every province in Canada holds workshops on it, and it seems the more people learn about the disorder, the more prevalent it becomes. Some therapists believe 1 in 100 North Americans is afflicted. That's about 3 million people. That 1 in 100 statistic is based on Dr. Ross's study, in which he sent graduate students door to door in Winnipeg with a questionnaire. He now admits his numbers weren't precise.
Ballpark-wise, it appears to be about 1% of the general population, making it about as common as schizophrenia or manic depressive illness.
But which ballpark are we in, if we're ballparking?
It's not 1 in 10,000. It's definitely more common than 1 in 1,000. It's probably somewhere in between 1 out of 50 and 1 out of 500, almost for sure.
But that number is out there now. I mean, people are quoting this study as proof that it's 1 in 100, and now you're saying you're not sure of that.
Well, that's people who are overconfident about the accuracy of the figure.
I think it's extremely rare.
Dr. Ed Frischholz doesn't believe Colin Ross's numbers. He's the former head of research at Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital in Chicago.
Colin Ross claims it's about 1%. I find that very hard to believe, and his data hard to believe. I don't believe that you can make the diagnosis in 2 hours or 1 hour just on the basis of a single interview. And I think certainly...
And that's what he did to get these numbers.
Correct.
Rush Presbyterian was the first hospital to have an MPD program. Doctors there have learned to be cautious about diagnosing the disorder.
The more rigorous you became, what were you seeing as far as incidents?
The incidence of multiple personality went down.
Because?
Because the application of more stringent diagnostic criteria showed us that this was not likely to be a real patient suffering from multiple personality disorder.
So the longer the scrutiny and the harder the scrutiny, the less cases you were seeing?
Yes.
If people with multiple personality occur in 1 in 100 in the general population, with much higher
Dr. Margot Rivera quotes the 1 in 100 figure with confidence. She has assessed over 200 cases, many of them referred to her for a second opinion.
Generally speaking, I schedule 2 hours for an assessment interview and then some time for writing a report and some time for consultation with the referring clinician, and that's about what it takes.
Are you comfortable that that's enough time to really be right about what you're saying?
Yeah, that's why I do it.
Because we talked to some other people in the field at Rush Hospital in Chicago, and it takes them 2 weeks to a month to make that kind of a diagnosis. It's a multidisciplinary team. There's lots of people involved.
Well, I guess we're different.
It's a pseudo-debate, it's all political. And what it's all basically about is people don't want to hear about child abuse and don't want to talk about it and don't want their patients to talk about it.
According to a book proposal by Dr. Ross and obtained by the Fifth Estate, he's a doctor who listens to his patients. Ross thinks he's uncovered a government plot going all the way back to the 40s. It seems some of his patients are starting to believe their MPD was implanted by the CIA. Their doctor has been helping them remember just how it was done.
They're taken to special training centers where these different techniques like sensory isolation and deprivation, flotation tanks, hypnosis, various memorization tests, virtual reality goggles, hallucinogenic drugs and so on are used on them to try and deliberately create more alter personalities that can hold information.
Dr. Ross thinks his discovery explains some of the criticism against the MPD movement. He thinks the CIA and others could be out to discredit them all.
And if the dissociative disorders field was starting to uncover some of the mind control experimentation that was done that's hidden in the alter personalities in the background, naturally they wouldn't be enthusiastic about that happening. So it would be necessary to have some sort of political strategy in place to counter that.
Which would be?
It's all just created in therapy, it's fantasy, it's not real, it's hypnosis.
Dr. Ross claims that the reason that there are people who have now dissenting voices against his type of therapy that he's doing are actually people who work for the CIA as programmers of children whose memories he is now uncovering in therapy.
Are you serious? Does that deserve a response?
Dr. Ganaway worries about what's to come next.
At one of the early MPD conferences, they passed out buttons that we were all supposed to wear that said, down with skepticism, up with awareness. It's always concerned me that there seemed to be more of an interest in validating each other's beliefs about MPD rather than in sitting back and trying to find out what this really is.
Just let yourself go slow. Just get the feel of it right now.
It's Sandy's first time in clay therapy. It's a therapy she looks forward to in the hope she'll get better, but one that in the end she can't endure.
He said he loved us! Yeah. And he's a 4-year-old! Not your fault. Not your fault.
treatment troubles the doctors who long ago abandon it because they believe it caused their patients harm.
We're not dealing with laboratory animals that we can toy with to confirm our own belief systems about things, to confirm our own theories. I mean, we're dealing with precious human lives, every one of them a precious, unique human life. In medical school, they crammed a bunch of stuff into us, but the thing that I retain the most is primum non nocere. First, do no harm. And that means not to the patient, not to their family, not to anybody. And I think anything less than that is unconscionable.
Anguish still echoes in Perry Sound for Bonnie, Connie, and Gail. Bonnie struggles with nightmares and a fear of her former therapist. Gail now has trouble with her memory, and Connie is humiliated that this could have happened to her.
It's just like a scam of the 90s, and I got sucked into it, and now I'll pick myself up, shake myself off, and try to go on with life.
All therapists aren't like the one we had, but there's quite a few of them out there who are destroying people's lives.
All this week on Living in the 90s, only on...
Let me call you sweetheart. Hey.